Hello and welcome to the show. You're watching Tech24. I'm Julia Seeger. As the month of September is said to have been the hottest on record in recent history, we talked to the director of ESA's Digital Earth Twin Challenge that is set to use AI and big data to create a digital and ever-evolving replica of planet Earth. This will then help find innovative solutions to solve a variety of problems, from food security to coastal monitoring. And in Test24, we'll give a boost to renewable energies by presenting you with two gadgets, the record-breaking solar-powered drone SB4 Phoenix by Sunbirds, and a smart reflector by the French startup Especial. But first, under the French legal system, criminal investigations are performed by the judicial police. Investigations usually involved witness interrogation, CCTV reviews, and analyzing forensic samples. Increasingly, officers have access to cutting-edge technology to help them solve cold cases, as Brian Quinn and Catherine Kidder-Clifford explains.
Making objects speak, to shine light on the circumstances around a crime. At the French National Police Institute for Criminal Research, this drinks can is being delicately handled, examined under ultraviolet light until its secret is revealed, a fingerprint.
This one is great quality. You can see it clearly. It's nearly complete. Once we've taken a photo, we'll analyze it to determine its quality and see if we can directly tie it to a record, a database to identify its source.
Hunting for physical objects, tracking the slightest clue, and analysing samples. It's all part of the daily routine for these forensic police officers. In the laboratory next door, tiny algae called diatoms are being studied under a microscope. Their simple presence in an organism is enough to identify a drowning.
We use these tiny plants to determine if a person has or has not died by drowning. When their body is found in an area near fresh water, the algae become indicators, like legal witnesses. We're able to make them talk.
This sort of evidence has been used for some 15 years by investigators. But more recently, other scientific techniques have been developed, like this scanner, which simulates crime scenes in 3D.
The advantage of having a crime scene digitalized on a computer is that we'll be able to come back to look at it months, even years after the crime. To take a closer look, for example, at the position of a clue that becomes key to an investigation.
Scientific developments bringing yet more tools to solve crime. Last year, the Forensic Science Department of the French National Gendarmerie handled over 240,000 files.
And to speak more about advances in the field of forensic is France 24's Peter OBrien. Thank you for being here, Peter.
Hi, Julia.
So we're actually getting better at tracking the movement of microscopic fibers in clothing.
Yes, so the University of Northumbria has carried out an experiment where they put two people in a lift for 10 minutes. One's wearing a black top, the other one's wearing fluorescent clothing. This lift is going up and down, the doors are moving, people are coming in and out, and what they found out under UV light after 10 minutes was that tiny microscopic fibers from the fluorescent clothing ended up on the black top. Now, this might seem mundane, but what it means is these fibers actually transferred through the air without any physical contact. So for a crime scene, you can imagine the consequences. This means if you've got two bits of evidence, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that the two people wearing those bits of evidence actually came into physical contact with each other.
It shows a pattern of how it moved around.
Yes.
Okay, now, what are other innovations we're looking at when it comes to crime scene investigation? Of course, time of death is very important. How do you make it more accurate?
Yeah, so the University of Amsterdam has actually found a way to model a crime scene in 3D to find out the time of death more accurately. The traditional way that we do this is by taking a temperature for a rectal examination of the cadaver. But the University of Amsterdam has figured out that you don't even need to touch anything on the crime scene. You can gather the skin temperature, the air temperature, body size, position, details of the clothing, put that all into a 3D model, and it becomes far more accurate, estimates the time of death within 40 minutes as opposed to within 3 to 7 hours for the traditional way of doing it.
Now, another tool that's becoming even more accurate with time is forensic genomics. What is that all about?
Yeah, so this is a really exciting field, and it's actually allowing a lot of cold cases to be reopened and solved. So the idea is you get a piece of DNA from the crime scene, and you put it through a database which has thousands of other people's bits of DNA, and you're looking for a match. So this is typically a family member, can be close, like your parent has 50% of the same DNA as you do, or it can be a distant relative who has a tiny fraction of your DNA, but they can still find you by making the comparison between the database and the sample. So this is very powerful stuff.
Right. And then briefly, of course, all of this is raising privacy concerns because we are talking about personal data.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of privacy questions over this. There's concerns about potentially innocent people being kept in these databases for years and years. And there's calls for national databases to be encrypted so they can't just be freely browsed by whoever has access to them.
Thank you, Peter. We're going to move on now to a whole other story. According to the EU's climate service, September was the hottest month on record globally, opening up the way for 2020 to become the warmest year in modern history. The need to track weather patterns and capture human behavior is becoming more crucial than ever. And to address this issue, the EU has launched the ambitious plan of creating a digital twin of planet Earth. Well, to speak more about it, I'm joined by Joseph Ashbery. He's the director of the Earth Observation Programs at ESA. Thank you for being here.
I'm very glad to be with you.
So tell us more about this initiative and why it was created.
So the Digital Twin Earth initiative is actually a further development of where we want to go in space, but also in better understanding our planet. Because what we have today in Europe is an observing system based on satellite observations, but it is also based on in situ observations, which are among the best in the world. Or some would even say it's the best Earth observing system in the world, based on the many satellites which we have built up and which we are planning to build up in the near future. So really, Europe has built up a very strong capacity. So now the next question is, how can we make use of this capacity and make sure that the people can fully benefit from what we have created so far. We have invested together, that means the European Commission, the European Space Agency and the member states on both sides of the European Union and ESA have invested more than 10 billion in building up the space infrastructure.
Now, Joseph, which technology and which data will you rely on to create this digital twin of planet Earth?
So what we will rely on is, on one side, the Copernicus data, which are data from satellites, which are built up together with the European Commission, the European Space Agency, and the member states. And the Copernicus program is today's world-leading program in Earth observation. And these are very large volumes of data which we are producing. For example, from our data hub, which is run by ESA, we are disseminating every day about 350 terabytes of data, which is huge volumes. But now the challenge is really to make sure that these huge volumes can be processed in a proper way and can be made available really to our people.
Now, precisely, how will a digital twin help in gaining more insight into global warming?
What we want to create is twins of our planet, digital twins, which means that we want to simulate some of the aspects of our planet. Of course, we can never create a digital twin of the whole planet. This is impossible because of the complexity of what we have ahead of us. But we would like to cut out certain segments where we want to make simulations. Let me take an example just to make it a bit more visible. Let's assume the Amazon forest. The Amazon forest is the lungs of our planet because it produces the oxygen which we need and converts the carbon dioxide in particular into oxygen. Let's assume now for a moment that you want to cut this forest by, say, 20% or 50%. Of course, nobody wants this to happen, but we would like to be able to simulate what would happen if you would cut a great portion of the Amazon forest or any other forest for the sake of the argument. And that, of course, has implications on the local population in Brazil and in the surroundings in South America, but also on the global climate. It would increase the temperature globally, it would increase carbon dioxide levels, it would increase sea level rise. What does this mean for cities in Europe, on the coastline of France, on the coastline of the Netherlands? So what is the what will happen if we do change one element of our planet and to simulate by turning the knobs with the various parameters and to simulate what would be the impact for people in different parts of the world. And in this case, of course, our focus is on Europe.
Joseph Ashbery, thank you for that. And it's time now for Test 24. And this week we have a gadget that is making a comeback on the set of Test 24. This week we had tried it 2 years ago, and this time it's the second edition of the solar-powered drone SB4 Phoenix by the French startup Sunburns, Peter.
Yes, so it's big, but it's very light, and last month it broke a world record. It crossed the channel and came back again in 2 hours and 10 minutes, so flying 100 kilometers, and it's the fastest drone ever to fly that distance, weighing less than 5 kilograms.
And with that autonomy.
Yes, it actually landed back with a full battery, having just used solar power the entire way.
Now, what are its applications?
So it's being used in Congo already, helping to map forests and fight deforestation. It's already surveyed around 30,000 hectares of forests. And in Australia, it's being used to locate water sources in the outback, and it's even being used to herd cattle.
Now we have a second gadget, and it's a totally different use of solar power.
Absolutely. So this is made by the startup from Lille called Especiel. And what it does is you can control it via remote, and it reflects natural sunlight into whatever room you need brightening up. So it could be an office, kitchen, a living room. That's their previous model. They've got a new one which is completely autonomous, and it works by using an optical sensor to tilt based on the angle of the sun to provide throughout the day optimal sunlight in whatever room you need.
So it follows the sun throughout the day.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Peter. It actually brings us to the end of this week's edition of Tech 24. We hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.